Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Charlotte Lee. She's the strategic lead for customer experience and innovation at Granicus. Charlotte, good to have you with us.
Hi, good to be here. Thank you.
And talking about customer experience and delivering a better one to employees and to those that are external, the communications piece seems to be foundational to this. Tell us more about that.
So I've been in the customer experience kind of area in different capacities for the past 10 years, and I've seen it evolve within the federal government early on, from user testing, user experience to system, human-centered design and user-centered design within systems. So that's the background I came in. And when I started looking at CX, I was very technically oriented, right? So this is just my perspective. I was very technically oriented, and I was looking at systems, the way users were interacting with websites, and thinking like, oh, this is how we provide a better user experience. But when I shifted my thought over to customer experience, right, I was like, actually, most experiences are so multidimensional. And we used to make a lot of comparisons, and we still do when we talk about CX, as like the Disney of it all or the Amazon of it all, right? But all of that actually is knitted together by communications in private sector. And in government, we don't have an inherent function or a part of a program success metric that says, how did you proactively communicate with them during these processes that transitioned over from, let's say, web to the phone center to the, so everyone's talking multi-channel, everyone's talking omni-channel, right? But when you are talking about a person moving from place to place, it requires signage. Hey, this direction here, this thing next, get ready for this, right? And that is actually what makes Disney, Disney, or Amazon, Amazon, right? It's the comms part of it. And I feel like a large part of the customer experience discussion in federal sector has largely missed sort of the role of proactive, transparent communication in an experience that is bound to be complex or just difficult, right? And the last thing I say is, as much as people want to make it easier by system modernization, I always say this, but you can spend $1 billion making this amazing thing, not spend any money or attention to outreach and communication awareness. No one knows about it. Nothing's improved, right? So, I'm really tripling down on the idea that comms in government is the key to actual CX improvement.
And communications channels then can be perhaps directly at the site at which someone is trying to access something, and
Absolutely.
knowledge of the system. So it could take the form of a pop-up or a big button that says, here's where you go next, that kind of thing. Are we talking about?
Right. So let's say you put an application in, right? It's the black hole problem we're talking about, Tom, right? Like how many times have people done something, submitted something, or requested something, and you have radio silence for 3 months? I have experiences like that all the time. And what do? I have to call the call center, which so many people are like, oh, it costs so much and all this stuff. How do we divert and how do we improve employee experiences? Well, you can start by communicating every 30 days or 15 days. Hey, we have your application. We're still working on it. Something that I learned at HIMSS last year, I think, I was talking to the VA experience people, and they were saying, oh, we got CX totally covered, but we need help with a couple things. It's managing expectations and guiding the journey. And that is what comms is. That's what I'm talking about, right? So the example he gave me was veterans are a compliant population. They're fine taking, 30, 60 days. We'll pay, like, we'll be fine. Just tell us the orders. But if you go 60 days and 24 hours, now you have a problem with this population. You said 60 days. But had you communicated before that, hey, we're experiencing delays. We still have your application. Don't be anxious. Don't be worried. What difference would that make to anyone going through an anxious application process? So I'm talking pop-ups, I'm talking communications, but I'm talking proactive managing of expectations.
It's almost like the analog of the delivery services where you get a tracking number and all you do is touch it, and whatever the latest information is will show up. It's left the factory, it's at this transfer station. Hey, it's around the corner and it'll be there in 2 hours, that type of thing.
Right. And you know what? That's a funny comparison because a lot of the experience work started with like the domino thing, like let's give stats. If that was actually the case, applications for things in government would be like, your waiting time is 1,232 days. Like we don't actually want to do that, right? So, and it's not possible. And I actually learned recently that the domino tracker is fake and it's solely for psychological comfort. And people are less frustrated by it, like just even the estimate of it. And I have seen this problem happen in the depths of Congress. I have seen this in the highest of executive orders, right? And um, it's just psychological comfort sometimes to know where it is or an estimate of where they might be, right?
All right. So you don't want to fool people either with
No,
communication. And that
right,
gets to the question of data, because for a communication to be meaningful, it must be informed by data, correct?
right. Usage of data for communications is around segmentation and personalization. And that is something that we can't do lightly. And a lot of people who are on the CX journey are talking about customer personas, user personas, right? And a lot of the behavioral tracking happens after they've engaged with you. But there is communication data that happens before. Why didn't they open that email? Why didn't they click that link? Do they not trust this link? Did you convey enough trust? Right. So there's data that you can garner just by what we call like it's data we call click rates and stuff, right? But really it's to a program, it means a lot, right? It's who are you engaging with, who are you reaching, what is resounding, what is not. We do A/B testing. Like, does this email convey more trust or this incite more desired actions, right? So there's a way to use data even before people engage with the software itself. And a lot of people have the, hey, but it's so creepy argument, right? But that is not what our data shows. Our data shows that if you are more personalized in government communication, they are more likely to comply or take the next desired action. So a small example is geographic data. They're like, oh, it's so creepy, Charlotte. Like, what if, like, I don't want government to know, but I'm like, well, people are voluntarily doing that anyway. But if you send an email that says, hey, Virginian residents, you may qualify for this, you are more likely to open it. People are more likely to open it. And that is just facts and data.
Sure. And in the federal sector, as much as in the municipal or state sector, there is the need to provide universal service. And that means that some communities are often underserved for whatever reason, connectivity or sophistication or whatever they know or do not know. So, how can you, I mean, what are some tips for these multi channel or omni channel strategies that we talked about earlier uh, to enable those to make sure that even the underserved communities get served?
This is where, in our perspective, SMS comes in really handy, right? The reach people where they are when they want to be reached by the preferred method of communication, right? So phone numbers and email addresses tend to change less than physical addresses. Some people cannot reach their physical addresses, right? So now we're talking, Tom, about like the very basics of what we are used to in private life that hasn't conveyed at all to federal. We are still thinking that mailing address is the gold standard, right? And we haven't been able to like reach people because who checks paper mail? I'm terrified of paper mail, honestly. If I see something in the mail, I'm like, I am in trouble. I am going to jail. Like, I don't want anything. And so 72% of Americans would like to be preferred to be contacted by email. People who are in abusive situations or in difficult crisis situations are not going to their mailboxes, right? So it's a matter of if you're trying to reach people at very significant or dire situations in their lives, perhaps the preferred channel strategy should not be mail and it should be almost required, I want to say, to be electronic, right? And that's not true. It is not the current like mandate that all communications needs to be electronic or by SMS or given an opportunity, right? It's best practice and a lot of agencies are doing. I'm not going to say they don't, but it's not, it's a secondary mode.
And earlier, we were talking about customizing outreach based on geography or some other characteristic. How can customized outreach encourage engagement? How should you make sure that that's the most effective way to go?
I was having a conversation with somebody in the industry about chatbots and using chatbots and things like that. So there's ways that chatbots, for example, personalization can mean language access, right? There's also personalization in um, exact step that you are at. So there's a wide range of what we're calling personalization, right? So like if I'm at step 3 of the 15-step process to receive a government grant, I would like some more information about the next step, not a general blast. And the biggest misconception we're trying to go away from as a company who has historically been, an email channel is we're not just talking about newsletters. We're talking about very segmented. Hey, like we know you subscribe to the topic of disabled, veterans, healthcare, and women. Like this means that your segmented interests are very specific. So if there is a women's veterans event happening near you, that is more relevant and helpful than receiving 35 unpersonalized and what we call like what we would like to mature as an organization toward, right? Like you can get personalized and that is more helpful, right?
All right. Well, you've given us some great things to think about in that customization area and alternative means of reaching people. I'm going to be thinking about my mailbox differently myself from now on. Charlotte Lee is the strategic lead for customer experience and innovation at Granicus. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Temin. You're listening to Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more on the CX Exchange.